folks, how are you? And yeah, it seems like my camera's waving around. So it seems like, well, the Balon d'Or again doesn't disappoint me from the negative standpoint. Let me rephrase that because it sounds like I'm being negative over Rodri winning the Balon d'Or. I'm not. Jude Bellingham, Vinicius Jr., and Rodri all had their respective arguments. So if any of the three would have won, they had their justifications just like they did have their shortcomings. There's always that to be looking at. There wasn't going to be a consensus winner. The thing is that things changed in a very short time span. Last night, I remember doing a podcast. I remember doing having a few conversations with certain people. We all went to bed thinking that Vinicius Jr. was going to win. Or for the most part, we assumed that Vinicius Jr. was going to win. Now, we wake up in the morning and Fabrizio Romano ends up saying, hey, by the way, Madrid's not flying to Paris. Then all of a sudden, wait a second, what happened? And then we start realizing what ended up happening is that Rodri ends up winning the Balon d'Or. To me, it was reminiscent of 2013 to a certain extent. Maybe not as blatant, but maybe not as quickly turned around and maybe leading to suspicion. And I would understand if anyone who thought and wanted Vinicius Jr. to win the Balon d'Or would think otherwise. It's an awkward situation. It's an awkward way of going about things. But it is what it is. It is what it is. Each one had their moments where there were shortcomings on their behalf in terms of overall play. Let's be serious. Let's be real. And at the end of the day, let me just kind of put this a little bit. I'm going on the fly here, so it doesn't matter. I'll just do it as is. If you don't like it, too bad. In terms of what Vinicius Jr. complained about, I think it's petty. It's very minimal. It's very, very childish to a certain extent to complain about an award. Maybe this is also a lesson for Kylian Mbappé to start focusing on those types of awards and say, maybe that's not for me. Now, the one that definitely said, this is probably not for you, is going to be UEFA. Because earlier on in the ceremony, basically they were baptizing the Balon d'Or in waiting. That was, of course, Lamine Yamal. Am I saying that Lamine Yamal is not deserving of any of the accolades that he's received throughout his very young career? No, I'm not. I'm saying that they basically said he's the one in waiting. He's the one that's going to win it next. The way he's playing, they're not that off. They're not that off at all. That's where we end up seeing the vacuum, which ends up being that. Let me do this again. Hold on. There we go. That's probably better. There's a vacuum. And these are the three players that many were expecting at one point, UEFA, FIFA, football in general, saying Kylian Mbappé and Erling Haaland. That's great. Erling Haaland is a player that at a certain point will not, there will be certain stretches of a calendar year that Erling Haaland will not even be mentioned. He plays for Norway. And when you look at criteria, or many criteria, some of the boxes that need to be checked is success at the international level. Being the all-time goal scorer for Norway is not a bad thing. Being the all-time goal scorer for a national team that won't sniff a World Cup, maybe is. You have to have your name constantly present in the minds of journalists, in the minds of fans. It's a popularity contest. It's high school, it's secondary school all over again. Who's the most popular one in your school? Who's the most popular person at your institution of learning? Who ends up being that person? That's who ends up being the one that people look at the most. And at times, there are journalists that don't look at every single league. There's some probably that only look at one league, and it's their own domestic league, and they still vote for the Balon d'Or. Now, am I questioning their vote? No, I'm not. I'm just telling you how it is. when it comes to all of this, it's just, again, criteria. What do they base it on? If it's on A, B, C, and D, then okay, fine. But then some years it's A, B, and C. Sometimes it's B, C, and D. Sometimes it's E, F, and G. Or sometimes it's A, E, F. Or B, C, D. Or B, X, Y, X, Y, whatever. So, again, I don't put a lot of stock on this. But at times you have to speak about it because you understand, okay, based on what? If it's based on this, okay. If it's based on that, okay. Now, we end up seeing that it's based on winning the league and winning in Europe. Because the problem with Vinny was, of course, getting knocked out by Uruguay in the Copa America. If Brazil would have won the Copa America, maybe it would have been a different conversation. But, well, we're in the world of supposition at that point. Real Madrid had certain reasons saying, hey, by the way, based on the criteria that we were given, or the criteria that's available, then the winner should be Dani Carvajal. Which is right. But, again, they went the childish route and not going because they didn't want to be embarrassed, or they didn't want to have the embarrassment languish on of having lost to Barcelona 4-0 and see Barcelona's anthem being played in Paris while Barcelona's women's team was on stage, while Lamine Yamal was being awarded, while Lamine Yamal is kind of, he has his little things here and there that he throws out every so often, which is good. Football needs a trash talker. Football's always loved trash talking, as much as people don't want to agree with that. So all that being said, at the end of the day, it's an award to the most popular person. You want to give it stock? Great. You want to give it stock? You want to give it that level of importance? That's all fine, by all means. I just say that I don't, personally, because the criteria is not all there. For me, there's always inconsistencies. For me, it's about popularity. Are there some that are deserving? Yeah, there's some that are deserving. But sometimes you don't know what they're deserving of, or based on what they're deserving. Or they're more deserving than another person. That, to me, ends up just being part of the popularity contest, part of the marketing, which has a lot to do with it as well. And we saw it today as well. To each their own, man. No big deal. It is what it is. It's an award. It's worthy of giving people lots of conversation and speculation, just like I'm doing right now. Despite me earlier saying, I don't really give too much about it. But, of course, since you do, I have to speak about it to a certain extent. So here we are. That's basically it, folks. There's not much else to add to this. There's not much else to speculate. Take it for what it is. A very good player ends up winning an award, and he gets recognition. And there will be speculation. There will be those that end up supporting it fully. There will be some that will completely hate it. There will be some that will completely despise it. There will be some that really don't care. And I'm part of that third camp. So, with that, I bid you adieu. Ciao.